Welcome back to another week of the Rebel's Edge, and a week where we've got a holiday shortened week, folks, and the last trading day of June. And June has been a heck of a month, just like May. So if you sold in May and you went away, you're not doing so well.
Don't listen to the idiots.
Don't listen to the idiots. That's right. But instead, listen to us, because we're going to give you some great insights into a bunch of stocks, macro minute, fantastic futures, and maybe some prop bets. We've got all that and more coming your way in about 15 seconds. Bang!
And we're off. Sorry, I kind of jumped in there with you, but I got too excited. I was ready to roll, man.
That's great. That's great. The cold opening was a little warmer than usual, I guess. And Pete, the cold open master, Mark Lepresti, is somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle right now. And I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. He really is in the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, God.
On the boat named So What? Who cares? What could possibly happen?
What could go wrong with that?
Who knows? Welcome back, folks. He is, of course, Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. Jared is handling the last day of June prior to us actually getting into July. So you guys know the drill. We try to bring you unusual activity that we've cited already, and we're about to dive into that. So let's hit fantastic futures and macro minute, Pete. I'll kick it off on the macro side saying President Trump's announcement to resume trade talks with Canada after Canada retracted their digital service tax. Remember, Pete, when everybody said these tariffs don't work? All he's done is collected, I don't know, $50 billion more from the tariffs. Everybody has collapsed, basically, because we're the biggest buyers on earth, folks. I don't know who doesn't understand that, but if we're the biggest buyer and all these other countries want to export stuff to us, if they don't make it a two-way street, if it's not fair, well, I guess we're going to cut them off. And cutting them off, we have China production numbers, Pete, manufacturing that is, were way down this month.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right, John, and I agree with you. I think from a macro perspective, we have to look at the China framework, which we came in with, which was great. But then all of a sudden, we've got this deal going with Canada, and it goes south on Friday. But you know what? I think the confidence of the people that were trading on Friday, John, and it was a huge volume day, 68 million contracts were trading on the options front on Friday. So it was a busy day. It shows you a lot. But I will tell you this, we bounced right back. We did take a little dip for a moment or two because of that news that the president was ticked off at Canada and said, the heck with it, we're out. It didn't take them very long to come right back and say, you know what, maybe we can work this out. And they worked it out. And so I'm kudos to the president and all the guys involved. You know, it's not just him, it's Bessent and all the rest of them, but doing a great job. And as you said, it's all about just being fair. It's not like we're penalizing people. We've been penalized for, I don't know, the better part of 50, 60 years, maybe more. I think because of that, it makes a heck of a lot of sense that the president's been standing his ground. And I think we're going to start seeing some of that 10 to 18 countries start coming to the table faster than probably a lot of people would. The people who are against the president don't want to see that. But I think we will see that sooner than people think.
Absolutely. Well, on the futures side, Pete, the 10-year continues to dip. And right now we're up to a 74% chance that we're going to see cuts by September. Now, they haven't picked a total, like, on this date or something, but they're saying by the September timeframe, we're going to start seeing cuts, which is more or less what you and I have been saying all year. Second half of the year, that's when we'll get the cuts. And in all likelihood, after the Jackson Hole event that goes on every year in Jackson Hole. So what do you got for futures today, Pete?
I'm going to get to this, John. How about that oil volatility index and the VIX? We're going to combine the two of them just to take another look at that. And what are we looking at when we see that? Well, we look at that OVX, John. It's down 22% in a week. And then you look over at the VIX itself, down about 13% in a week. And actually, if you stretched it out a little further than a week, it's an even much more dramatic drop. But like, I'm trying to be fair about this. I look at the oil volatility index is trading, call it 41, 42. I look at the VIX itself. It's been in the 16s. It actually was earlier today. Last I looked, it was just above 17. So interesting to see where we are. But I think a lot of that has to do with everything that you and I are talking about. The fact that the markets are hitting record highs, the fact that we've got a lot more going for us right now. And I think there's a little bit of momentum going on behind the president right now in terms of what we're seeing going on with the tariff talk. So all of that just tells me that volatility could be down here, could even get a little bit lower. We'll have to see this week how things trade. It is an interesting week because of the holiday, but I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the week we were actually maybe into the 15s potentially, but at least into the 16s again.
Yeah, because what happens, folks, is people like us, because Pete and I were those people back in the day, start pricing in next week into these options because we're going to be closed Friday, of course, the 4th. We are going to get half a day. We're going to stop at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday. So it's all about these first 3 days. And don't be surprised if, as Pete said, we see the volatility coming down into this long holiday weekend, because basically it's going to be like a 4-day weekend. Because again, Thursday's a half day. Friday we're closed. Saturday, Sunday. You price this ahead 4 days and you're going to get a much lower volatility. All right. Let's dive into some good ones, Pete, because we got two great ones to kick it off. We've got HPE, which is Hewlett Packard Enterprises, trading higher following a settlement with the Department of Justice, the DOJ, concerning their $14 billion acquisition of Juniper. And we had unusual activity in here. So take a look, folks, at the activity that Jared's putting up there. They were buying the 3rd of July, that's this Thursday, as I've already said, 18 calls for 55 cents. Well, those calls already went close to 6x, a solid 5x, Pete, from when we spoke about this on a Friday before this last Friday, the 20th of June. And what a great trade. And if you want a bunch of them like that, folks, go to the link that Jared's putting up on the screen. Just follow that link and you could be subscribing to exactly the sort of stuff that we're showing you on the screen.
You know, I like what we're seeing too, John. We see a lot of volume trading in HPE. It's about 1.5 times normal in the first 2 hours. That was pretty impressive. It's also when you look at them, John, from the standpoint of what do they look like at their core? Well, they traded a 20 PE. That seems like a pretty fair number. That's why the stock is jumping up the way we are seeing right now, because of the fact of not only is it a reasonable stock and actually in this marketplace, something that by the time they get in this Juniper, which is going to be it's going to enhance the competitiveness of HPE. And that's what's going to be so important for them. So I think the combination of this settlement happening and this opportunity with this monstrous buy, and that's, again, something that we've been talking about time and time again, John. People are missing out on the fact that there are so many mergers and acquisitions going on, IPOs that are going on, direct listings even for that matter going on. There is a lot more going on in the financial industry than people are really recognizing right now. And of course, we recognize what happens when we see this unusual option activity. That was a pretty good sign that something good was going to be happening, and certainly it has.
Well, and you gotta love what's happening with First Solar, Pete, because many of the solar stocks, in particular Chinese solar stocks, were just cracked. But First Solar is getting a notable increase because of commentary about tax credits and the introduction of excise taxes and so forth. So turns out the Senate may be a little more favorable to some of those tax credits than people at first thought, Pete. And these guys are a solar manufacturer. And we had unusual activity in it way out in August. Well, way out, 2 months into the future, out in August. And same spiel as before, folks. If you want to make some money on these unusual option activities, follow that link that Jared's putting up on the screen, and you'll be able to go and subscribe to exactly the sort of stuff that Pete and I trade every day. And we wouldn't trade it as much as we do if it didn't work.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, John. And actually, these tax credits, what I thought was interesting is they're for domestically produced renewable projects, which, there are a lot of Chinese solar stocks out there. This is not for them unless they're doing it here, unless they're building it here, which but I find it really, really interesting. And the fact that we had this unusual option activity, it's another tip of the cap to the idea that somebody out there had some idea about what was really in this whole thing, this whole credits thing and the budget bill and everything. So again, really, really impressive. This is a stock that's it's making a pretty nice jump today, John. Last I looked, it's up about 8%. I'm not sure where it is right now. But if you really go back in time, it was down about 26% because of the concerns people had. So it's making up some of that right now. And wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those names that maybe has a lot more into the future where it could go to the upside.
Well, how about this one, Pete? You and I have talked about Joby Aviation, Joby, a lot. And for good reason. It's up 40% in a month. And that's not because of takeovers, folks. That's because this is one of those eVTOLs that's electric vertical takeoff and landing that these craft are able to do. And they just completed their first piloted vertical takeoff and landing flights in Dubai. That's one of the first, it is the first place where they're rolling out these air taxis, Pete. That's a big deal and obviously huge for the company. And that's why it hit a new 52-week high today.
Yeah, nice big move. Unbelievable. Last I looked, that thing was up, 17, 18%, something like that, John. Air taxis, electric air taxis. It is so interesting. It seems like we're the Jetsons, the George Jetson world or whatever, but a 6-year exclusive with Dubai, that's kind of interesting. 40,000 flight testing completed, so 40,000 miles. That says a lot. And you know what? They're globally trying to roll this thing out this year and next year. It's going to be interesting. It's so futuristic that it's still sort of baffling, quite honestly, for me, John. But I'll tell you what, it makes a lot of sense on all the areas where it's a lot more difficult to get from A to B. And this gives you the opportunity to get there, and it'll get there maybe a heck of a lot quicker. So it's all understandable to me that why this would be something that people would definitely want. It's going to be really, really interesting. The commercial readiness of this whole thing is proof already with Dubai. I think that's going to be something really great, and we'll be keeping our eye on to just see how safe is it, how's it going, all the rest of it. But so far, so good, and I'm pretty impressed with what's going on with Joby.
Yeah, they're pushing towards FAA certification. Once they get that, Pete, that'll mean that Delta and Uber, which are the first two to sign up with them, will be offering robo flights, or perhaps they're not robo, but they'll be offering those eVTOL flights by late 2025. They're hoping, Pete. So that's this year or early 2026. Pretty phenomenal. All right, let's take a look at CHE, Pete, because this one, we've not talked about this a lot, folks, but CHE is down hard. They disclosed Medicare admissions in both April and May in Florida were much weaker than anticipated and lower than subsidiary VITAS, which is their internal projections for how much money they bring in. So no good news on this one, Pete. And the stock is reflecting the fact that people are shunning it right now in pretty big numbers.
No doubt about that. Down whatever it is, 13%, new 52-week lows that it's hit today. Last I looked, it was very close to those lows still, John, and not much reason to say that somebody's going to step in there and find themselves something great, because unfortunately, they, like you said, it was weaker than anticipated, and just about everything, every metric that you'd want to look at just isn't making it happen for them. And I think that's the real problem right now, and that's going to be an issue. This is one of those where, for me right now, there's too much that's going to happen. This is a no touch. This isn't one of those where you look at it and you go, you know what? They kind of got juked out of this or that or whatever. They didn't really, they shouldn't have got hit as hard as they did. They should have been hit as hard as they did. They have been hit, they haven't really been able to perform pretty well. And the problem is they just delivered all these various numbers. None of them looked very good to me, and I don't see any reason why that's going to change anytime soon. Now, could they start to get something going if they did this and this and this the right way? Maybe. But right now, John, they're floundering around, and it's not one of those. I think this is a no touch.
I don't disagree. There's nothing in this report or the fact that it's a $470 stock, Pete. I mean, let's be real. A lot of times when people don't cut those stocks when they're that expensive, they're trying to keep people out of shorting it because it becomes kind of onerous to do so. And yet the people that have shorted it have been pretty happy over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at one of our favorite guys, Pete, Pat McAfee. And Pat is, of course, one of the premier sports analysts in America. He is a really funny dude, and we're not going to show you what he does on the funny side on his shows. We're going to show you what he did when he was a player. So, Jared, let's roll it and take a look, everybody.
You know, he's got to be somewhere in the top number 1, number 2 spot for anybody in sports, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. And John, he makes that Saturday morning show during football season it's a better show because he's there. But here he is as a punter, as a kicker. And, you know, you can kind of tell by that, he's got a personality to him. He's not your usual punter or kicker. Usually those guys are dry. They're not very fun. They really aren't a part of the team. Matter of fact, Lou Holtz used to always tell us, John, you know what? We should give you guys your separate bus. He hated kickers and punters. But you know what? I think Coach Holtz would have liked this guy because he's got this, you know, very outgoing personality. He is who he is. You know, and the guy's a pretty good athlete, really. I mean, between the punting and the throwing and the kicking and everything else, the guy.
Yeah, look at that one. You know, he takes guys out on the sidelines and things, Pete, when they're trying to get those extra couple yards, thinking, oh, it's just a punter. And then he lays the wood. So I really enjoy the highlights of when he was a player. And now that he's an analyst, like you said, I really don't know of somebody that I'd have more fun watching. I like the Manning cast, but I really like what Pat McAfee does with his show and his gaggle of folks.
I don't
some
get
of
half
which
of those.
You know pretty well.
I know some of those guys, and I don't know why they're there sometimes. You know, like I won't name names, but there are certain guys that they show them, and the guy just sits there staring at the camera. It's like, well, and Pat's holding, he's got his tank top on like he always has and everything. It's great. Well,
sometimes he's got his leg up on the table.
Oh, yeah. When he's getting kind of serious about something.
Yeah.
Well, let's stick with the NFL, John. Here's what I got for you. Let's look at the AFC. And the reason I thought we could do that today, we'll do the NFC tomorrow and make it a little bit of fun, just kind of preparing ourselves and maybe putting our butts on the line a little bit, but that's okay. We do it every day in the stock market. We'll do it in the sports market too. So
sure.
AFC East, who do you think is going to be the top dog coming out of the AFC East? Now, the easy answer is the one that I'm going with, which is Buffalo. And the reason I'm saying that is I love the quarterback. I've thought the world of him since I got an opportunity to watch him play in Wyoming back in the day before he got to the NFL. John, they've built a lot up there. That is a great stadium. They've got a great advantage being home field there for them. I think it's cool. He's embraced it. They've got a lot of guys they've picked up here in the offseason. They just picked up a corner today from the Dolphins, and the guy's a freak show player. So they just kind of build and build and build. And the way Josh Allen can run that offense, running with the ball, throwing with the ball, I think Buffalo takes the East. What do you think?
Well, certainly there'll be a lot of eyes on them, Pete, because they'll have they'll have the newest facility in pro football as well. And it might be ready for playoffs. Playoffs? Yeah, it might be ready for playoffs, Pete, because they say it could be delivered if they decide it's safe and everything else, because, you know, just like a home or an apartment, it's got to get an inspection, but it could be ready for playoffs this year, Pete. And it's a state-of-the-art facility. Not only is it big, but it's going to be just, you know, a show place. I think a lot of people are going to be jealous and not domed, right, Pete?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they like the idea that they play in the elements up there.
Well, you got teams like Miami coming up there. They don't really like that snow, John, and they tend to get Miami to come up there like in November, December. So they're going to have snow.
Yeah. Well, you guys should check out, what the renderings look like and so forth. I think it's going to be a pretty cool stadium up there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to switch it up a little, Pete, and go with the Ravens and the Eagles. Everybody, all the betting sites, I think right now have the Eagles not necessarily winning it. In many cases, they do have them winning it, but the Eagles are at least in the top 3 or 4 for every single matchup. They're the top matchup versus the Ravens, top matchup versus the Bills, top matchup versus the Chiefs, and all the way down to the Lions, Bills, which is, I think, a little bit more of a long shot, Pete, even though I love the Lions and the Bills. But I think the Eagles are going to be the NFC representative. It certainly looks like that. And then the question is, as you said, okay, but who's going to win the East? Because I think whoever wins the East is going to be who plays the Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Well, you've got the East, you've got the North. I'll tell you this. So I like Buffalo in the East. As far as the North, I like Baltimore a lot. And how do you not like them, right? I mean, they've got a great quarterback, got an unbelievable running back in Derrick Henry. They got always that swarming defense that they've got. But daggone it, John, I'm looking at the North and I say to myself, how on earth did Pittsburgh go 10-7 last year with no quarterbacks? And now they got Aaron Rodgers. Now they've picked up a bunch of different other players that can fit in. They've signed people they needed to sign and everything else. I'll tell you what, it sounds crazy because I like Baltimore more than anybody out there, but I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and think, great coach. They got a great defense. The offense lacked one thing, a quarterback. Boy, I'll tell you, it makes me start to think that maybe the Steelers can come out of there, either number one or they're right behind Baltimore potentially. So that's the way I view that North, John. I look at it, the East, it's Buffalo. The North, I think I'm going to go crazy town and say it's Pittsburgh. I think for the AFC South, I'm going to hit Houston because Houston had a little bit, they had the great year 2 years ago. Then last year they didn't play at the same level. I think the quarterback was, sophomore thing. They always talk about that. So I changed that around, but I think this year he'll be back. I like the coach. I think what they do defensively, offensively is all good. And then if I go out to the AFC West, I'm looking at Jim Harbaugh, who, years ago I used to dislike him. Now he's my favorite guy. And I actually get out there every once in a while, John, and I'll say he might be the best coach. And I don't mean like this year. He might be the best coach I've ever seen because he's done it at every single level. Not everybody does that, and now Belichick's going to be in North Carolina. Who knows how he does down there, but it's always going to be interesting. But I'll tell you, Jim Harbaugh's done a great job. He's got a great quarterback. He's got a slew of running backs, a really nice offensive line. They had a really good defense as well. I think there's a lot of reasons. So I'm going to say that it's Harbaugh. And by the way, that means that they're in front of Kansas City. And I know that's crazy too. So I'm putting them in front of Kansas City and I'm going to put the Steelers in front of Baltimore. But I know it's crazy, but you know what? You just don't. Football gets different every single year. There's something that happens, something bounces. It doesn't bounce perfectly. But I know that's going out there. But that's the fun of it too. You can go out there a little bit, and that's where I'm going. Those are my four. That's my top 4 AFCs. We'll do top 4 NFCs tomorrow. But do you like the South and the West, or what do you think?
Yeah, I do, and I like Harbaugh. I'm anxious to see Pete Carroll and what he can do with that horrible Raiders team, Pete, because other than Max Crosby and, a couple of those players, they were really tough to watch.
Yeah.
But now they've got a quarterback. They brought in Geno Smith. I think he was a good pick, through free agency and so forth. And I think Brady, helped make that happen rather than Sam Darnold. So tip of the hat to Tom Brady for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Raiders are going to be much, much better I just, it's a tough division. I don't know how well they can do this year, but maybe a year from now, maybe a little bit better. And they got that Ashton Genty guy, John. He's unbelievable. All right.
Yep.
Next up, let's jump to a little bit of NBA. And I just wanted to run this one by you just to hear what you think about it, because I find it so interesting that these guys find themselves into a bad spot. So Malik Beasley. So in the 23-24 season, this guy decided to start doing a bunch of prop bets on himself. Now, had he been betting, John, against other teams that were not playing in his court or whatever, you know what? I kind of get it. You've got an issue. You got a little bit of gambling thing going on, and you shouldn't be doing it, but you're doing that. That's a little different. He was betting, allegedly, the investigation's still going on, but allegedly he was betting on himself. Now that's kind of a slight issue, right? I mean, like if you short yourself on rebounds or whatever, or points or whatever it is that you're doing as a prop bet, is anybody going to touch this guy, John? He's only 28 years old. When he did some of this, he was call it 26 years old, but man, he was just about ready to sign a $42 million deal with Detroit. And he was doing all this betting when he was playing for Milwaukee. But holy smokes, I mean, again, do we have to point the finger at Adam Silver and go, hey, this is nuts. How did this happen? And this is going back years ago. This isn't going back, a couple of months ago when they were playing this season. So interesting to see that they dug this thing up. But what happens to these guys, man? Just tell me that. What makes these guys decide, okay, I'm doing pretty well. I'm making 15 or 20 million bucks a year, but you know what? I got to bet on these games. I mean, what's the deal?
One prominent sports book did something that you and I do every day, Pete, and that is they looked for unusual activity, and they found it. Unusual heavy betting interest on his rebounds. So the odds on him recording fewer than 2.5 rebounds, they all of a sudden shot up, the odds on that. And they're saying, what an odd stat for somebody to pick. But, and I agree with his attorney, Pete. His attorney's protecting him, and he's saying, hey, an investigation is not a charge.
Right.
But it's certainly suspicious that he was on the underside of that for something that he could truly help influence. Now, if you're betting on you scoring, for instance, like I'm betting on me scoring 30 points tonight. Okay, that's not, nearly the same sort of thing as perhaps the rebound's coming right towards you and you duck it or whatever. I don't know. It seems like something that Silver's going to have to look at. And obviously, Pete Rose, he was betting on his team to win. Allegedly, he never bet on his team to lose. And so, that's what you kind of expect from a coach. Yeah. Betting on, not that you expect him to bet, but if you did say it's okay to bet, you'd expect him to bet on himself, not on the other team, because obviously you could sway the odds of the other team winning by who you put out on the field, or maybe you and a particular player decide we're going to tank the game or whatever, like the Black Sox did from Chicago back in the day. But this, it doesn't pass the smell test, Pete. If indeed they have the goods on him, this kid probably kissed off a $40 million contract.
It's really sad. It's really sad that these guys get involved in that whole thing. And, the whole betting thing has gotten a little bit out of hand, I would say. But, I guess you could point the finger at whatever. But nonetheless, interesting and sad for Malik, because, man, he was just getting ready to sign this contract, too, when all this kind of bubbled up. Anyway, that's all we got for sports, man.
Yep, and that's all we got for the Rebels Edge, folks. Seeing a nice little rally out of the market at mid-session. Let's keep an eye on that and on the Senate, because, of course, the Senate's 11th hour changes are what's going to make a difference on whether the big, beautiful bill passes or not, Pete. And Pete and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then.